Maya, 30 years old, divorced, and already written off by most of my family, stood at that family barbecue knowing something they didn't, that for years I'd been quietly funding the very future they mocked me for not having. So when my sister laughed loud enough for everyone to hear, beer in hand, smoke curling through the yard, and asked, "How does it feel knowing you'll never amount to anything?" It was meant to be entertainment, a public reminder of my place, but she had no idea the tuition emails, the payment confirmations, the semesters she never worried about were tied to my name, and when I smiled calmly and said, "Amazing actually, since I removed myself from your college tuition," her face dropped. My father screamed a question that cracked the afternoon wide open, and in that moment the joke ended, because the life they called useless was the one that had been carrying theirs. Smoke from the grill drifted low across the yard, sweet and greasy, sticking to my hair as paper plates bent under ribs and potato salad. Kids ran barefoot between folding chairs. My sister leaned back with that practiced ease she used when she had an audience. She clinked her glass with a fork and laughed, loud enough to pull every head toward her. Then she looked straight at me and said, "So seriously, how does it feel knowing you'll never amount to anything?" Her smile wide, confident. Expecting the laugh to land, expecting me to shrink like I always did. My father froze mid-bite. My mother's hand tightened around her napkin. A few cousins laughed too quickly, the kind of laugh people use when they sense danger but choose comfort. I felt the heat in my chest rise and then settle. Calm came first, which surprised even me. I set my drink down, felt the condensation soak into my palm, and smiled back at my sister, slow and even. "Amazing actually," I said, my voice steady, conversational. "Since I removed myself from your college tuition," the words floated there, light, almost casual. The shift was instant. Her laugh died halfway through her breath. Her eyes flicked to Dad, then back to me, sharp and searching. "What are you talking about?" she said, too quickly. Dad stood up so fast his chair scraped the concrete. "What college tuition?" he barked, his voice cracking. "She paid that." Forks clattered. Someone whispered my name. My sister's face drained. She opened her mouth and closed it again, like the air had been knocked out of her, and for the first time that afternoon, everyone looked at me instead of her. "I handled it," I said, shoulders relaxed. "Every semester, the invoices came to my email. Easier that way." Mom shook her head slowly, eyes darting between us. "That's not true," my sister snapped. "Dad, you know that's not true." Dad turned to her, red creeping up his neck. "Then explain the transfer receipts she's talking about," he said. "Explain why your school emailed her and not us." The grill popped behind us, grease flared. Nobody moved to stop it. My sister laughed again, but it came out thin, brittle. "You always exaggerate," she said, pointing at me. "You wanted to feel important." I nodded. "Maybe," I replied, "or maybe I just paid when the account balance dipped and you called crying from the dorm hallway." Her eyes flashed. "That was once," she said. "It was 6 times," I answered, gently. Dad looked between us like he was watching a language he didn't speak. "You told us scholarships covered it," Mom whispered. "Most of it," my sister said, voice rising. "She just helped sometimes." Dad slammed his hand on the table. Soda cans jumped. "Sometimes doesn't equal 4 years," he shouted. "Sometimes doesn't equal housing deposits." Mom covered her mouth. I added quietly, "And the study abroad fee." My sister spun toward me. "You promised you wouldn't bring that up," she hissed, words sharp enough to cut. Silence followed, heavy and undeniable. A few guests shifted away, already sensing this wasn't their fight anymore. Dad stared at my sister. "You signed paperwork," he said slowly, realization creeping in. "You asked me to co-sign something freshman year." Her shoulders dropped an inch. "It was nothing," she muttered. "It was a repayment clause," I said, still calm, standard. "Just in case things turned ugly." Mom sat down hard, chair legs scraping. "You planned this," she said to me, not accusing, more stunned. I shrugged slightly. "I planned to protect myself." Plates cooled, flies circled. The laughter never came back. Voices rose around the table, arguments branching off like cracks in glass. Dad demanding answers, Mom asking why she hadn't known, my sister pleading and snapping in the same breath. I stepped back from the table. The grass cool under my feet, my chest oddly light. Behind me the barbecue kept burning unattended, smoke thickening. I caught my sister's eye one last time. She looked smaller now, uncertain, and for the first time she didn't have a line ready. Just silence where confidence used to live. The yelling layered over itself, voices colliding like plates dropped too close together. My sister kept saying my name sharp and fast. Dad demanded dates and numbers. Mom kept insisting there had to be a misunderstanding. Smoke from the grill burned my eyes as I stepped closer to the table again. "You want details?" I said quietly, and somehow that cut through them. Dad turned fully toward me, face tight. "When did this start?" he asked. I glanced at my sister, freshman year. First semester. When she called crying from the dorm stairwell because her payment didn't go through. "That was private," my sister snapped, her voice breaking in places she tried to hide. "You said you were helping," Dad shot back. "Helping doesn't look like 4 years." Mom shook her head slowly, hands trembling. "Why wouldn't you tell us?" she asked me. And the question landed heavier than the shouting, because every time I tried to speak, I said, "I was told to stop being dramatic." My sister laughed bitterly. "You loved feeling needed," she said. I met her eyes. "I loved keeping you housed and enrolled," I answered. Dad rubbed his face hard, knuckles pressing into his eyes. "So the scholarships," he said, trailing off. My sister jumped in fast, covered most of it. Dad turned to her again. "Most doesn't mean none," Mom whispered. "How much?" The table went quiet. The kind of silence that makes forks sound too loud, enough that I know every payment date by memory. I said, enough that I stopped buying furniture and started memorizing tuition calendars. My sister stood up suddenly, chair tipping. "You're making it sound worse than it was," she said. Dad didn't look at her. "Sit down," he said, low and final. She hesitated, then sat, arms crossed tight. Mom looked at me with something close to fear. "Is this why you never asked us for help?" she asked. I nodded once. I already was the help. A cousin cleared his throat. Another stood and started gathering plates. People sensing this was private now. Dad leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Show me," he said. "Show me proof." I reached into my bag slowly, the zipper loud in the quiet. I slid my phone across the table, bank statements open, dates highlighted. Dad scrolled, jaw tightening with every swipe. Mom leaned in, her breath catching softly. My sister leaned back instead, staring at the yard. "This is invasive," she muttered. Dad snapped. "So is lying." He looked up at me, eyes glossy. "You did this alone," he said. It wasn't a question. "I did," I answered, "because I was told it was simpler that way." Mom pressed her lips together. "Simpler for who?" she asked. Already knowing. My sister laughed again, thinner this time. "So what now?" she said. "You want a medal?" I shook my head. "I want honesty," I replied. Dad slammed the table once. Sharp, final, "Enough," he said. "You don't get to mock this." He turned to her. "You let her carry this while you played victim." My sister's eyes filled fast. "You always take her side," she said, "because she never causes scenes." Dad shot back. "She absorbs them." The words hung there, heavy. Mom reached for my hand, then hesitated, like she wasn't sure she was allowed. "Why stop now?" she asked softly. I looked past her to my sister. "Because respect isn't optional anymore." My sister scoffed. "You're punishing me," she said. "I'm stepping back," I replied. "There's a difference." Dad nodded slowly, understanding settling in. "So the payments," he said. "They're done." I nodded. "Done," my sister whispered. "You can't just." She stopped when Dad looked at her. The grill flared behind us again. Someone finally turned it off. The sudden quiet felt unnatural. Dad exhaled hard. "We're not done talking," he said. "This isn't over." I nodded, knowing that too. My sister stared at the ground, her confidence gone brittle. Mom looked between us like she was seeing two strangers. I felt something loosen in my chest, not relief, something steadier. The family barbecue had ended without anyone saying it out loud. Food untouched, laughter gone, and the truth sitting heavy between us, waiting for what came next. Later that night the yard emptied slowly, relatives hugging too long, pretending this was normal. Dad told everyone to leave, his voice tight. My sister hovered near the door, mascara streaked. Mom followed me inside. Kitchen light buzzing. Sit, Dad said, pointing to the table. We are finishing this. My sister crossed her arms. You embarrassed me, she said. I answered quietly. You did that yourself. Dad inhaled. Start talking, he said. All of it. The fridge hummed loud, like it was listening too, while dishes cooled untouched. Tension thickened. Nobody reached for water or comfort anymore. Belonged to truth. My sister paced, heels clicking. You always play the martyr, she said. Mom flinched. Dad stayed standing. Explain the agreement, he demanded. My sister froze. What agreement? Mom asked. I pulled papers from my bag, slow and deliberate. First year, I said. She signed a repayment clause. My sister laughed sharp. You tricked me. Dad grabbed the pages, eyes scanning fast. This is real, he said, voice dropping. You planned consequences. My sister whispered. I planned boundaries. I replied, meeting her stare. Silence spread. Mom sank into chair, breathing shallow. History rearranged itself right there, without warning or mercy tonight. Dad looked at Mom. You knew nothing, he said. She shook her head, tears pooling. I thought scholarships, she whispered. My sister cut in. They were partial. Dad turned sharply. Partial still means paid, he said. My phone buzzed. Another receipt. I slid it over. Dates lining up, months stacking. Dad's hands trembled. This covered housing, he said, and books, I added. My sister's voice cracked. I was scared, she said, finally honest, about losing everything, approval, comfort, identity. The lie had grown too big for her to carry alone anymore. Tonight, Dad exhaled long and tired, shoulders sagging finally. Mom reached for my sister, then stopped. Why tell us now, she asked me. I kept my voice level. Because it was weaponized. Dad nodded slowly. She mocked you while taking, he said. My sister snapped. I never asked. Dad replied. You accepted. The words cut. Mom whispered. This changes things. I watched my sister shrink, bravado peeling away. She looked younger, lost. What happens next? She asked, softer, and everyone waited for my answer. The night pressed close, walls listening. Family roles shifting, secrets surfacing, nobody sure where loyalty would land once truth settled fully between us all breathing. Dad spoke first. Your tuition ends, he said to her. Figure it out. My sister flinched. You can't, she started. Dad cut her off. You're 30. Mom covered her face. We failed somewhere, she murmured. I felt a pull of guilt rise then pass. I offered help with conditions, I said. Respect was one. My sister laughed weakly. Since when? Dad answered. Since always. Silence followed, thick and final. The house felt different already, as if foundations shifted, old expectations cracked, power redistributed quietly, without shouting, without applause, just consequences settling into bones of family present that night together uneasy. My sister turned on me, voice trembling. You enjoyed this, she accused. I shook my head. I endured it. Dad stepped between us. Enough, he said. Mom looked up, eyes red. You should leave tonight, she told my sister. Shock flashed. You're choosing her, my sister cried. Dad answered. I'm choosing honesty. Bags were packed upstairs, drawers opening and slamming. The house breathed in chaos. I stood still, heart racing, aware this line could not be undone once. Family dynamics shifted. Childhood roles burned away, leaving adults facing outcomes alone, without cushioning or denial anymore. The night stretched long ahead. Later my phone lit up. Messages from cousins, confusion and whispers. I ignored them. Dad sat across from me, elbows on knees. You okay? He asked. I nodded. Tired, he sighed. I should have seen this. Mom hovered in the doorway, unsure. Dinner tomorrow, she asked softly. I shook my head. I need space. She accepted it surprisingly. My sister's room went dark upstairs, a door closing on years of imbalance that had favored noise, cruelty, comfort over truth. Tonight reset the rules. Whether anyone wanted that shift or not, the silence answered louder than words ever had before there. I left near midnight, air cool, head buzzing. Dad hugged me tight, longer than usual. Call me, he said. Mom touched my arm, hesitant. Drive safe. My sister stayed upstairs unseen, the barbecue debris still outside forgotten. I sat in my car, hands steady. Realizing this was only the beginning, finances untangled more secrets ahead. Tuition was just the first thread, and pulling it had already changed everything between us forever, including trust, inheritance, loyalties, stories told behind backs. The family myth cracked slowly, audibly under weight of truth exposed, that night leaving scars and clarity side by side finally. The next morning my phone rang before the sun fully cleared the windows. Dad's name lit the screen. His voice sounded older somehow. "We need to talk again," he said. "There's more." I drove back by mid-morning. Mom sat at the table with paperwork spread out like she'd been up all night, bank letters, folded envelopes, my sister's handwriting on sticky notes. "I started checking things," Mom said quietly. "After you left, I couldn't sleep." Dad slid a folder toward me. "Your help didn't stop at tuition," he said, eyes heavy, realization settling deeper than anger had. I flipped through statements. Dates jumped up fast. "This is the car insurance," I said, "and her phone." Mom nodded, shame written clear across her face. "She told me you were borrowing money from her." Dad exhaled sharply. "She told us you were unstable," he said, voice breaking on the word. My sister came down the stairs slowly, eyes puffy. "You're all talking about me," she said. Mom replied, "We're talking about the truth." My sister laughed weakly. "Truth feels different when it's aimed at you," she said, sitting hard, defensive walls rising again despite exhaustion filling the room. Dad turned the folder toward her. "Explain this," he said, tapping a highlighted charge, "emergency credit card." My sister rubbed her temples. I panicked. She admitted, "I didn't think it mattered." Mom's voice cracked. "It mattered to her," pointing at me. "While you told people she was failing." Silence pressed in. My sister whispered, "I never thought she'd stop." The sentence landed heavier than any insult before it. Dad stiffened. "You assumed access," he said. "That's different." My sister opened her mouth then closed it, words finally running out. Mom looked at me, eyes searching. "How much?" she asked again, softer this time. I named the number, watched it land, watched Dad grip the table edge. "That's more than our savings," he said, disbelief hollowing his tone. My sister's breath hitched. "I didn't know it added up." "She said," I answered. "I did." Dad pushed his chair back, paced. "You were supporting this house too," he said, pieces clicking together, while being mocked for standing still. Mom wiped her cheeks. "We let this happen," she whispered, weight of it bending her shoulders inward. My sister looked at me then, really looked, voice smaller. "Why didn't you say something sooner?" I shrugged lightly. "I did," I said. "It just sounded like noise." Dad stopped pacing. "She learned you wouldn't fight back," he said. My sister flinched. "I thought it was fine." She murmured. "You always handled things," Mom snapped, sharper than before. "Handling isn't the same as agreeing." The air shifted, something breaking open. My sister swallowed hard. "I don't know who I am without all of this," she admitted, finally honest, finally scared, finally human, and that scared everyone more than anger ever had. Dad sat again, calmer but firmer. "This changes how we move forward," he said. "Everything." My sister shook her head. "You're cutting me off." Dad replied, "You're learning limits." Mom added quietly, "So are we." My sister's eyes filled again. "I need time," she said. Dad nodded once. Time without access. I stayed quiet, letting them speak. This wasn't mine to carry anymore. Mom reached for my hand this time without hesitation. "We owe you," she said. Voice steady now, I replied. "Just remember who showed up when it mattered." The words stayed gentle, grounded, real. By afternoon, boxes sat by the door, my sister packing what she could, tension low but constant, like a bruise pressed too often. She stopped near me, awkward, unsure. "I didn't hate you," she said. "I envied you." I met her gaze. "You had support," I said. "You just didn't notice." She nodded slowly. "I notice now." Dad cleared his throat. "We'll talk later," he said to her. She left with a quiet hug for Mom, none for me, which felt honest enough. The house settling into a strange calm once she was gone, like it could finally breathe. Before I left, Dad walked me to the door, sunlight sharp on the porch. "This isn't finished," he said. "There are things we need to fix." I nodded. "I know." Mom hugged me tight. No hesitation left. "You don't have to carry everyone anymore," she said. And for the first time I believed her. I drove away feeling heavier and lighter at once, the road ahead unfamiliar, but clear. Knowing the biggest twist wasn't what I revealed, it was what everyone else finally saw, and what they could never unsee. Again, family reshaped in real time, quietly, painfully, honestly. Weeks passed without noise, the silence heavier than the yelling ever was. Dad called more often, asking small things, how work was, whether I'd eaten. Mom sent photos of the house, little changes, a cleared table, a fixed light, proof of attention. My sister stayed quiet, distance doing what words couldn't. Then one afternoon Dad asked me to come over again, his voice careful. "We're sorting paperwork," he said, "things we ignored too long." I arrived to find folders labeled clearly, finances separated, responsibilities rewritten. The house felt steadier, like it had been holding its breath and finally exhaled, and for once I wasn't carrying the oxygen for everyone else. Dad pointed to a document. "We adjusted the will," he said, watching my reaction. Mom added softly, "Transparency this time." I nodded, no shock left in me, just clarity. Dad continued, "Your sister needed help longer than we admitted." Mom squeezed her hands together. "So did we," she said. I listened without fixing anything, without volunteering solutions, and that felt new, powerful in its quiet. Dad glanced at me. "You don't have to be the buffer anymore," he said. I answered honestly. "I won't be." The words settled naturally, not sharp, just firm, like a door closing gently but completely. My sister came later that evening, standing awkwardly in the doorway, thinner somehow, eyes softer. "I didn't come to argue," she said. Dad stepped aside. Mom nodded, letting her in. She looked at me last, hesitation written clear. "I'm staying with a friend." She added, "I found a part-time job." I said, "That's good," and meant it. She swallowed. "I didn't realize how much I relied on you." I replied, "Reliance isn't the problem." She waited. "Disrespect is." The word landed between us. She nodded slowly, accepting it without defense this time. We sat together, all four of us, quiet but present. Dad spoke first. "This family leaned wrong," he said. "We put weight where it didn't belong." Mom looked at me, eyes steady. "We see it now." I felt something loosen again, not forgiveness exactly. Understanding. My sister wiped her face. "I'm embarrassed," she admitted. "I built myself by tearing you down." I answered gently, "You don't need to rebuild on me anymore." She breathed out, shoulders dropping. "I don't want to," she said, and for the first time I believed her words might outlast the moment. Dinner was simple, no speeches, no jokes at my expense. Dad asked my opinion about work renovations. Mom asked if I wanted leftovers. Normal questions, respectful ones. My sister listened more than she spoke. Every pause felt intentional, earned. Later Dad walked me out again. "You changed the direction of this family," he said. I shook my head. I stopped holding it up. He considered that, then nodded. Mom hugged me, long and grounding. "You're allowed to choose yourself," she said. I smiled. The words landing deeper than she knew, reshaping something permanent inside me. Driving home, I thought about the barbecue, the laugh that started it, how close I'd been to shrinking again, and how quietly everything shifted instead. Work felt lighter now. Money stayed where it belonged. My phone stayed silent when it needed to. My sister texted once, a simple update, no request attached. I replied briefly, kindly, without urgency. The balance felt right, not cold, just clear. I realized freedom hadn't arrived with fireworks. It arrived with boundaries respected. Conversations changed, and the absence of dread when my phone buzzed late at night. Months later the family gathered again, smaller this time, intentional. My sister paid her own way, joked carefully. Dad listened more. Mom spoke honestly, and nobody needed me to absorb the tension anymore. I watched from the side, present without being responsible. When my sister caught my eye, she smiled. Tentative but real, I returned it. Not because everything was fixed, but because it was finally fair. The story they told about me had changed quietly, through actions, through absence of rescue, through consequences allowed to land where they belonged. I left early that night, not out of discomfort, but choice. The drive home calm, steady. I thought about who I'd been when I paid silently, shrinking while holding everyone up, and who I was now, visible without performing. The twists everyone remembered came from one sentence, but the ending came from what followed: consistency, distance, truth lived daily. My life moved forward without dragging anyone behind it, and the family learned something simple and irreversible: support given without respect eventually ends, and when it does, what remains shows who everyone really is. If this story stayed with you, like the video and subscribe. Your support keeps these stories alive and reaching the people who need them.